So the very first lecture, the first thing the lecturer said was, "What is social policy?" And I thought, oh, I don't actually know what this is. But he was great. He sort of used some really hot topics, and at that time asylum seekers were very high on the list. And he used some newspaper clippings and tried to show how this was a topic, and how policies were being put in place to address some of these issues, and how the media has a perspective, how local people have a perspective, how the asylum seekers have a perspective, and it was really, really interesting. And basically he laid out the fact that that we need to go back in history to be able to see where we are now, and to see how that affects how we make policies, how we decide where we're going to put our fundings, our public money, how we're going to decide what initiatives to follow. And so he basically just took us through, step by step, really, a historical pathway.
I try to introduce as much visual imagery as I can, because obviously it is very much a performance situation, because you're very removed from the audience, and you know, there's certainly no conversation going on between you and your audience. So, I think particularly in terms of history, you can use a lot of images to bring things to life. So I do use that. And also, the other main thing that I try to do is to relate what I'm talking about to people's daily life. So always to use examples of how points I'm trying to make relate to something that might have happened to the students, or in terms of where they are in the kind of life course. So, you know, these are things that happen to you when you're a young person, these are things that happen when you're an older person. And I think really they like the history lectures the best, because of the, you know, I use photographs, and so whether it's the Webbs or Beveridge or Lloyd George, or, you know, whoever it is, I always have a picture, so, you know, they've got a face to recognise in terms of perhaps just thinking about the historical facts and interpretations. So there's that, and also, you know, the kinds of pictures that you would find in publications of the time, the magazines and the newspapers and the books, and the kind of images of the workhouse, and all those kinds of pictures. And also I try to introduce a kind of local element. So I use pictures of places around Sheffield to try and say, you know, this happened, you know, in this city, and in all the cities and towns where you come from. You know, you could find similar pictures to these. So.
I think the most explosive conversation we had was over inner city issues, because some people came from inner cities and other people came from outside of inner cities and had a completely different, you know, picture of how that is. And that can be quite, because people say, well, I live in the inner city, I know what it's really like, but people who are on the outside have a different perspective because they're not in the inner city. They can sort of say things that perhaps somebody who actually lives there can't say because they can't see it. So that was quite an interesting one.